reading mean comments from viewers. Go fuck yourself. We're just tired of you lying endlessly. You're an even bigger idiot than I thought. Oh, just fuck off, you dickhead. You are the worst person on the internet in its entirety that I have ever encountered. Fucking hell, you're a piece of shit. You have been banned from participating in the Division subreddit. Oh, sorry, I meant to say, reading mean comments from the Division subreddit moderators. There came a point when I was making this video where it was becoming so huge that I thought, Christ, I really need to break this up into smaller YouTube-friendly episodes, or reformat it so that it's more like a traditional 21 kiloton news dump. Especially since I'm covering well-worn ground that regular viewers have heard oh so many times before. But then on reflection I realised that this is a story that needs to be told. Someone has to document the entire misinformation campaign that surrounds the Division 2. Besides, I'm not in the business of chasing YouTube metrics. My Patreon supporters who kindly bankroll this operation certainly don't need me to cut up their food into bite-sized chunks for them. And genuine fans of the news dump will tolerate a slightly long-winded video where I include material that I've covered before on other occasions. So I'm sorry if this video is too long and not entirely original, but I had to try and encapsulate in one episode the grand totality of the Division 2 propaganda apparatus. The Division 2 is a fascinating phenomenon. It's an unmitigated fucking disaster, but it's publicly perceived as a glowing success, frequently held up as a positive example of the live service business model. Admittedly, that's mostly said by people being paid to say so, but nevertheless, it is said. People can defend the Division 2 all day long, but here are a few hard truths. It's fucking boring. And not only is it boring, but all the incoming new content is going to be boring too, because it's the same basic content reworked. This game is so fucking boring that most of the players are left. I can only see one Division streamer still playing the game. And it's now on discount most of the time. It's boring. Deal with it. That's why all the players and streamers fucked off to play other games. So how the fuck is Ubisoft Massive maintaining this lie that it's all fucking cream cakes and rainbows and everything is just fucking spiffing? The point I'm going to make about the Division 2 is, what they were selling us was a lie from the very start. As an organisation, Ubisoft knew it was a lie. The state the game is in will be lied about throughout its life cycle. The future fixes and content delivery are also a lie. When this is all over, Ubisoft will retrospectively reconstruct the narrative and tell a mighty ballad about struggling against the odds to make the game the players deserved. Obviously, by this point, 99% of the customers will have fucked off already, and there will be very few people around to protest those lies, and even fewer around to actually watch the fucking protest. This reversioned history will, however, be very useful to sell to the press during the build-up to the release of the Division 3. This game was always planned to be an under-budgeted, rushed catastrophe, and Ubisoft's deliberate strategy was just to throw it out of the door, then bullshit like crazy to make as much money out of the situation before the IP collapsed. I'll qualify a few things right now before they're used as strawman attacks against what I'm saying, so please keep these facts in mind. I'm not saying the Division 2 isn't fun to play. It just gets fucking boring very quickly. It's not worth the £100 I paid, and in fact, given how many microtransactions are in it, should have been free to play, as I stated in my original review. I'm not saying the game has no creative merit. It's got some beautiful ideas and design work. It is, however, assembled in a rush, under fucking budget, and it's as broken as a Chinese dissident's ribcage. I'm not saying the developers are necessarily at fault. From what I know, most of the ground level devs worked very hard with less time, staff or crunch payments than they deserved. Of course they worked hard, because this game was made on a budget vastly smaller than you imagine, and primarily by albeit skilled but nevertheless peripheral studios. We are talking big budget indie game here, not small budget AAA title. It was made on the cheap. They did the best with what they were given. This said, I would qualify that I know factually that certain specific developers and managers made some appalling decisions. At least a couple of them are fucking liars, and I know for an absolute fact that one of them is a total prick of the highest order. Don't worry, if you're a dev at Ubisoft and you're watching this video, I'm probably not talking about you. There's a clue there. I'm not even blaming or judging the community managers and the PR guys. I'm just describing what they do. A snake bites you because it's a snake, and CMs and PR guys lie and suppress legitimate criticism because it's their job as professional liars. You can call it perception management if you like. You can call loot boxes surprise mechanics if you like. But they lie because that's what they are paid to do. It's their job to be perceived as nice, and for the game to be perceived as good. It's not their job to be nice, and for the game to be good. How things are perceived frequently has no bearing on what they actually are. I'm simply trying to highlight the machinery, how it works, and how we need to perceive it, precisely because The Division 2 as an entity was designed from the ground up to deceive us. This was a live service shitshow which took 100 quid of our money, delivered a fraction of what was promised, is failing to either fix what is here or to deliver on future content, and operates under a cloud of deception, maintaining the public facade of success. It is fascinating how The Division 2 has failed so utterly, yet is perceived so sympathetically. How can the game be such an unmitigated disaster on all fronts, yet somehow virtually nobody is reporting on it? How does Ubisoft control the narrative so comprehensively that the public perception of this game is positive? I would like to note though, if you love The Division 2, then good for you. I have mates that are still enjoying it. I'm not saying it's wrong to like this game. Admittedly, most people think it's fucking tragic. But if you enjoy the game, I'm genuinely happy for you. Personally, I love this franchise. I just think The Division 2 is a crappy product and not worth a penny that I spent on it. So let's work our way through this house of lies, this hall of mirrors, this creepy fucking carnival of bullshit that is The Division 2, and see if we can figure out how the machinery of deceit works. And in order to do that, we will need to take a quick look at the state of The Division 2. Hype and overselling. A huge foundation of The Division 2 sales pitch was that they had learned from their mistakes, and that the sequel would fix all the problems of the first game using the new Snowdrop 2 engine. A new high-tech engine based on technologies barely comprehensible by man. A fearsome engine that would blow away the problems of The Division 1 like the solar wind blowing away the Martian atmosphere into space. Well, that all turned out to be a giant pile of horseshit too, didn't it? I cannot verify that Snowdrop 2 is substantively different from Snowdrop 1. Fuck, I can't even verify it exists. From what I can see, it is near as damn it the same fucking game engine, with a bit of extra functionality for developers and the number 2 slapped on the end of the name. Not that I've actually managed to find that logo. How do we know all this? Because all of the original bugs and problems of The Division 1 have neatly and precisely ported over into the sequel. This is a very bold deceit. The unique selling proposition, the core justification and premise for a sequel turned out to be comprehensively and demonstrably unfucking true. The obsequious and servile reviews of The Division 2 were a sight to behold. I'm talking about all those nice people given privileged early access along with lists of talking points and no doubt for many an envelope of cash and or channel promotion. I don't need to cast doubt on the dubious nature of most of the reviews because I can just say this. The game has had more patches, hotfixes and mini patches than anyone can keep fucking track of. And the game is still a broken buggy mess. So anyone who claimed this game was a brilliant game that only had a few bugs must either have not played the damn game or be from a parallel universe. The facts speak for themselves. With only a few notable exceptions, the pre-launch reviews of The Division 2 fail to accurately depict the game we are currently playing. Go back and watch some for yourself. If you are having fun playing The Division 2, more power to you. But I know people who work in the video game industry who were laughing at some of those entirely inaccurate reviews. The failure to deliver. As everyone is aware, the game launched not fully tested, completely unpolished, and more importantly, many features listed in the sales material were entirely missing. The extra paid stash space we paid for changed to a perk. The raids were late and did not have matchmaking, which was a cardinal promise of the game. Even more significantly, the whole of World Tier 5 was not finished and had to be delivered after a month. However, what is really sinister is that much of the unfinished content being inserted into the game has transformed itself on the Ubisoft official sales material and is being repackaged and remarketed retrospectively as free additional content. It's like watching history being rewritten in real time in front of your fucking eyes. Despite their promises, the game is also now pay to win, a full price AAA product where you can bypass progress by just paying cash money. The Year 1 free DLC episodes are farcical and some of the content expires. Some of this DLC will arrive midway or late into the first year and will expire at the start of Year 2. Think about that. Year 1 content that you just get for a matter of months before it expires. The 7 days early access that you pay for has now also firmly entrenched itself as a deceit. The PTS came out and you don't get access at all on console, and everyone on PC gets to try it from day one. I'm sure they will roll out a sweet line in bullshit to explain this, but the promises on the box have not been fulfilled. The DLC episodes were always destined to be a failure for one simple reason. They were hyping them and selling them long before anyone had even figured out what would be included in them. They alluded to content like the Division 1 DLCs, which contained entire new extensive game modes. They never gave specific details, but were happy for us to believe we would be getting good stuff like Survival and Underground, updated for the new game. Right now, the new DLC episodes of The Division 2 look like they're going to be a mixed bag of repetitive, rehashed missions. You know, like those kinds of missions we are already fuckbored with. I think there's some free crap loots, a couple of weapon skins and some random obligatory key fob for our backpacks, or some equally insulting cosmetic irrelevant shit. Sadly, I don't think anyone will be surprised by the fact that the only single thing that Ubisoft Massive delivered with absolute perfect precision from 9 AM day one was the in-game microtransactions and the pedo caches. Think hard on that. A game of this scope, with such a comprehensive list of bugs, unfinished content and technical issues, and the one single thing I have never seen anyone mention is broken, is the in-game loot box delivery system. It would appear that Massive can wire its shit together tight and on time when it comes to microtransactions and kiddie gambling mechanics. Fucking priceless. I don't think it's particularly controversial at this point to say we didn't get anything close to what we were promised. So how come so few people are complaining about this? How come the gaming news isn't up in arms? The smoke-filled room. There is a fascinating psychology experiment called the smoke-filled room. 8 students sit down and take an exam. The catch is that 7 of the students are actors, instructed to sit there, continue the exam, act normal and not react to anything. Only 1 student was real, and they didn't know they were the test subject in the experiment. After a while, the experimenters would blow smoke under the door and trigger a fire alarm, and make it appear like the room next door was on fire. If you did this to a person on their own, they just get the fuck up and get out of there. But most of the time, if a person is sitting in a room full of strangers who are acting like everything is fine, the test subject will sit there confused, not moving, not causing a scene, because the peer pressure of seeing everyone around them acting normally renders them incapable of making a rational decision to escape the fire, despite the obvious clear signs and smoke billowing under the door.
She feels uncomfortable. She doesn't want to embarrass herself by taking the lead, taking action. Something is definitely wrong.
Lauren stayed in the room for 20 minutes after spotting the smoke.
People don't like to break from the script that everyone around them is following. Most people would rather just be agreeable, and if the consensus is that the Division 2 is good, they would just rather not make a fuss. The relevance of this experiment will become increasingly clear during the course of this video. The emotional dimension of live service games. People like to think that they make decisions based on logic and reason, like fucking Spock. That is, of course, fucking absolute nonsense. Even when it comes to cold hard financial decisions, people frequently involve all kinds of emotional baggage. For example, why the fuck do people spend £600 on white Jimmy Choo trainers? There is no logical reason. They're not worth that much money. They're not made from unicorn leather and stitched together by fucking pixies. They're just fucking trainers. This is a pair of shoes that is worth 600 quid, and you can climb fucking Everest with those. So why spend 600 quid on shitty white trainers? There's shit on the floor. Why wear white shoes at all? You're only going to get shit on them, and then you have to buy another pair. Which is probably why they like selling white shoes in the first place, I guess. You can get yourself a pair of nice plastic sandals for a fraction of the price. They are the vastly more practical and economically sensible choice. So why not wear the creepy plastic sandals? Imagine turning up at a restaurant and explaining you're wearing Crocs from now on because they're such a bargain and they let your feet breathe. No, you can't imagine saying that. You wouldn't because you're worried about what people think of you. People buy Jimmy Choo trainers because they want people to think they are fashionable, successful and wealthy. The point is that we most often buy certain things because of what we think about ourselves and how those purchases make us feel. Like it or not, but your feelings have a lot more to do with your spending and opinion forming than you realise. Another example of this is the scientific research of risk taking. Give someone some money and ask them to gamble on various odds. People are generally cautious because people have some cash in their possession and they don't want to lose it. They are risk averse. However, once someone has lost some of that cash, they are much more likely to take greater and greater risks to try and win it back. People make these decisions not based on mathematics, but based on their feelings of losing their investment and their desperation to get back what they lost. The live service business model very deliberately exploits this aspect of decision making in a whole host of ways. Primarily, just like the gambling experiment, it relies on the principle that when people have invested emotionally and financially in an enterprise, they are highly likely to continue to engage with it because they don't want to feel like they have wasted all that time and effort. The whole business model is about stringing people along, filling their heads with promises, showing them roadmaps, getting them to have faith, spend money, spend even more money on the microtransactions, getting them emotionally and financially invested. This is one of the reasons fanboys are so fanatical about defending the franchises they have invested in so heavily, because to turn around then, after all that time, and admit the game is a pile of fuck, by implication, means they have to admit to themselves that they have been mugged off. The view that the Division 2 is shit is a threat to them emotionally, because if that view is right, then by implication, they are fucking delusional idiots for having blindly defended it so aggressively all this time. People throw good money after bad. We pursue that which withdraws from us. There are many ways to describe this aspect of human nature. Incidentally, this aspect of human nature is a key component of gambling addiction, loot box mechanics, pick-up artistry techniques, abusive relationships, the Spanish prisoner confidence trick, and for that matter, live service games. The illusion of action. Another aspect of stringing out the junkies and keeping them focused on the game, like a cat chasing a piece of string, is the constant illusion of action. That everything is being worked on, everything is being fixed, new stuff is coming, the promise of a better tomorrow, if you just hang around for a bit longer, and maybe buy a few loot boxes whilst you're waiting. Personally, I didn't buy this game 4 months ago so that they could spend a year or two making it not quite as shit and boring. The point is, The Division 2 is as much as a process as it is a product. It's about the journey, it's not about the destination. And I'll tell you right now, we will never get to the destination. This is all about getting people on the train, making them pay for a ticket and pay for refreshments during the journey. They have zero incentive to get to the destination. Ubisoft Massive is going to do the least amount of work possible to keep the whales playing and the loot box addicts spending. They're going to make choo-choo noises and slowly creak down the tracks just fast enough to make the passengers think we are actually fucking heading somewhere, whilst milking people's wallets as hard as fucking possible in the fucky microtransaction store. The main function of the state of the game is to maintain the illusion of action. It's part of the pantomime of creating an impression that Ubisoft is beavering away and an army of developers are working day and night to fix all the problems. It is largely a pretense, with a bit of entertainment thrown in. Allegedly. It's theatre. It's acting. It's PR. It's certainly got nothing to do with listening to the players, and practically fuck all to do with the reality of what is going on behind the scenes. It's about placating the player base, and making them feel like the lights are still on and someone is home. Ubisoft Massive is very good at creating the illusion of activity, but let's face it, not very good at actually doing stuff. For example, the broken loot algorithms. Putting aside the fact that the explanation of how they worked given to me by a developer turned out to be nonsense, and I had to explain to him some of the inconsistencies. Putting all that aside, players have been screaming about the shit, pointless, broken fucking loot for 3 fucking months and nothing has been done. This is a looter shooter, and the loot is fucked. I mean, how much time do they fucking need to fix the fucking loot tables? They say they're working on it, but fucking hell, so far it's taken 3 months to achieve precisely fuck all. Fuck all. Where is the action? Julian Garrity, during the heat of a debate, tells the crowd he will watch my video. Obviously, once the rabble had moved on, he just got back in his carriage and headed back to the palace. Of course he never watched the video. We were making bets that he wouldn't. He was just saying whatever he needed to say in the moment to look like the good guy, because that is the Ubisoft Massive way. Say whatever makes you look good at the time, then hope people have forgotten about the issue when you don't deliver on your promises. Come to think of it, that is pretty much the format of State of the Game. But he's happy to tell the crowd that he will do something, just not actually prepared to do it. And then of course there is the endless list of bugs and glitches which they are working on, like the specialist ammo bug, the shitty servers and audio lag, which never get fixed. Anyone who played The Division 1 will remember various bugs that endured for the entire life cycle of that game. But nevertheless, Cheech and fucking Chong would get up in front of the camera every week and tell us they are listening, it's a known issue, and they are working on it.
We know that there are a lot of discussions that need to be had about things like loot and bug fixes and all of those things. The big update's coming next Tuesday. All of those things will be an ongoing conversation based on where we are at with episode 1 when it comes out. It doesn't make sense to have those conversations.
Yes, that's true. That's when you gave me the turtleneck.
Yeah, that is.
The subreddit. I mentioned the shitposts I got from the moderators of the subreddit because it's a priceless example of the difference between what people say is going on and the reality of what is actually going on. The subreddit is, after all, the #1 destination for players looking to see what is going on in the Division community. Theoretically, the subreddit should be a place where pissed off players can go and politely wave their pitchforks and demand Ubisoft Massive pull their collective thumbs out of their collective fucking arses, amongst other things, and get to fucking work fixing the game. The reality is, however, that the subreddit is there as part of the advertising apparatus of Ubisoft Massive. It's a car showroom where Massive can show off its happy, smiley-faced gaming community. Hey, look at us! We're a happy community and the game is a success! That is its job. It's free advertising for Massive. The subreddit moderators obsess over formulating, refining and enforcing their rules. But the reality is you can pretty much do anything you like on that subreddit as long as you're supporting the Division, supporting Ubisoft or supporting the moderators. However, do the opposite and then the rules suddenly rain down on you like rods from fucking God. Seriously, have you ever seen one of those dumb shit posts about loving the new microtransactions? Ever seen one of those deleted by the mods for being a low effort post? No, never. The moderators never delete low effort posts if they are promoting microtransactions and in-game cosmetic purchases. So if there is a subreddit moderator watching this video who still desperately clings to the fantasy that the subreddit is independent and not influenced by Ubisoft Massive, ask yourself this. Why do the low effort posts promoting microtransactions never get deleted? The moderators on the subreddit casually violate GDPR regulations, casually break their own rules, casually spam people with abuse and personal insults, privately and publicly on a few occasions, although when I went back to grab some screenies, those comments were conveniently deleted. They are perfectly happy to let a person called Gay Retard 69 spam insults at me and call me a fat cunt. I shit you not. Gay Retard 69. Perchance someone must know the location of his mum's basement. However, I raise concerns about the subreddit's impartiality because the head moderator has received 2 free holidays from Ubisoft and I get banned because apparently that's just going too far. So if my account had been called Rugmuncher666, I could have gone on that subreddit and called any critic of the Division a cunt, and that is perfectly fine. But mention that the subreddit might have a conflict of interest because Ubisoft flies them out for wank jobs by the pool in Las Vegas, and that shit right there, that's just unacceptable behaviour. Well, whether they want to admit it or not, the subreddit is a big part of the deception puzzle. I don't know how they rationalise their own actions, but from the outside it's pretty clear that the end result is a subreddit that is hostile to anyone who criticises the game and showers praise and rewards on the fanboys and the village idiots. Just how much of these policies are directly dictated by Ubisoft Massive is up for debate. But given some of the recent rule changes and astroturfing of criticism, I would say quite a lot. The propaganda machine. Ubisoft has a lot of power and influence in the media by virtue of the vast amount of advertising revenue they dispense. They spent $9 million just on TV ads in March. I heard they spend $400 million a year in total on advertising. Christ, they may have actually got to the point where they're spending more on advertising than on actual game development. That would certainly explain a lot if it turns out to be true. Ubisoft's propaganda machine is impressively comprehensive and infiltrates and influences your gaming world on every level. They have purchase on gaming journalists and gaming news outlets thanks to their huge advertising spend. They partner with YouTubers and social media influencers like Ice-T, which is kinda cool. and convicted criminals who defraud their fans, like T. Martin, which is a lot less cool. And this influence runs through every strata of the gaming world, right down to players that walk amongst us, and the people we communicate with on the forums, subreddit and Discord. The Discord server, incidentally, is ruled with an iron fist, and people talking too loudly about bugs and consumer issues get banned. Sometimes abused and then banned. It's run by Ubisoft staff, subreddit bootboys and PC Master Race Gestapo like this charming fella. Whether you are reading the gaming news, watching YouTube videos or engaged in debate on social media, there's a shockingly high chance that directly or indirectly you are engaging with a party or parties that are influenced or just downright being paid off by Ubisoft. I recently watched this GameSpot video. The video represents a monument to just how well Ubisoft bullshits the gaming world. Any long-term non-fanboy veteran of the game will watch this and snigger at some of the stupid shit and nonsense they blindly regurgitate as if it is factual information. They have completely misrepresented the 515 gear fiasco. GameSpot claimed that they responded to player requests for higher level drops and responded with 515 gear, and allegedly the players threw their fucking toys out of the pram. Oh well, they tried. There's no pleasing those guys. What really happened is that players complained that most of the time gear drops are fucking pointless because the loot algorithms are fucking balked. Independently of that situation, Terry Potter stitches up massive on State of the Game by introducing 515 gear in the DZ because PvP has failed. They back down because it breaks a fundamental promise about all gear levels available to all players. They fucked up. They fucked up twice. They just fucked up. The video is bad because it's basically regurgitating Ubisoft Massive's press releases like it's fact. This isn't journalism. This is like basing a review of a product on the leaflet in the showroom. It's not journalism. It's fucking long-form advertising. Then there are interviews like this fucking peach with Yannick Bonchereau. Talk about bowling underarm. This entire article reads like a fucking advert. Only an advert that positions unhappy customers as grumbling and uses emotive terms to describe the community like backlash, anger, rage. It paints a picture of an incredible game where the developers struggle to deal with the ungrateful, angry, malcontent players who can never be satisfied. This article is primarily just dishonest, and in addition, it's fucking disrespectful to the customers. This is one of those articles where the editor calls the journo into his office and says, "Do an interview with this bloke from Ubisoft, and you'd better make him look good, or they're going to stop spending £200,000 a year on advertising. Play nice, and don't fuck this up." Then, of course, there is the issue of the social media influencers. As I've mentioned in previous videos, if you say nice things about The Division and get into bed with Ubisoft, then you get guaranteed channel growth. They have people with tens of thousands of followers on Twitter promoting your content, and on plenty of occasions they just pay money to YouTube to push views on your video. If you are giving Ubisoft hand shandies under the table, you can post your videos on the Discord or the subreddit. If not, you get instantly banned on Discord or eventually banned on the subreddit. Then there is the Stooge Academy, the Elite Task Force, and the Star Player Program. These initiatives are primarily geared around creating loyal acolytes in what is best described as a mutual backslapping exercise. Most of the participants, once they get a little taste of fame, get starstruck and in some cases a sense of self-importance and completely lose objectivity. A few of them will remain objective, but most of them immediately start acting like a 16-year-old in a rock star's dressing room. They're so overwhelmed and starstruck, they'll suck off the whole band, and the roadies too, just so they can stay in the dressing room a little bit longer. Obviously, some of the ETF and star players are just content creators. It literally just represents a mutually beneficial business arrangement where they both provide each other with positive and sympathetic coverage. It's a mercenary arrangement. It's business, and business is good. I will note that I personally know a few star players and ETF members who did manage to maintain their objectivity, and credit to them. I did also observe how one of them found it quite difficult to post a video critical of the obvious defects with The Division 2, precisely because it put them in a difficult position. You could see they were finding it hard to tell the obvious truths, because they didn't want to come across as disloyal or disrespectful. They didn't want to burn their bridges or lose valuable contacts. And I guess that's the point of a lot of these player initiatives. Be nice to them, take group photos, give them bags of free stuff, and watch those conflicts of interest flourish. It was no fucking surprise that when Ubisoft rolled out loot crates in The Division 1, an army of cunts jumped to their defence. Nearly every single ETF member and partnered YouTuber descended on social media to argue day and night that loot crates were great and good for everyone. Well, I guess history has shat down their backs, because obviously the story of the sadistic and predatory nature of loot boxes is almost at an end. Soon they will likely get banned precisely because they are a fucking demented mechanic for swindling players. But my point is, the ETF and the Star Player program is a stooge academy, and it creates loyal minions that support your brand. The funniest thing about this whole business of paying off content creators is that it's a double-edged sword. You see, now the marketing budget for the Division 2 launch has run out, so have most of the content creators. The second the money dried up, they fucked off to other games, because this game isn't popular enough to make it worth their while. Lastly, there is the literal army of sock puppet and Smurf accounts, which all serve to influence and covertly shape the narratives on the forums, and particularly the subreddit. Most players visiting the subreddit, for example, have no clue they are swimming in a sea of fucking sock puppet accounts. Some of these Smurf accounts are relatively benign. They're literally just Ubisoft devs who work on the game, who don't want to sign in with their real names and dox themselves on Reddit. Think about it. Over the years, many thousands of devs have worked on the Division franchise and have a vested interest in the game and a legitimate concern about it. We all post on subreddits for games we only play, so of course devs who work on the game are going to care enough to do the same. I don't think these guys set out with a covert agenda, or their intentions are malicious. But consider the implications of this mechanic, having a couple of thousand anonymous users swimming around the pool, all with a vested interest in the game being a success, all sensitive and defensive of anyone criticising their hard work. Well, that obviously contributes to the direction of debates. It's an entirely understandable and organic mechanism, but nevertheless contributes to the artificial and manipulated microcosm of the subreddit and forums, precisely because the devs have a personal and professional agenda that is not necessarily aligned with the interests of the customer, and they are not flagged as Ubisoft employees when you communicate with them. Look, you might think I'm speculating here, but I know this is the case for reasons beyond the obvious logic. First off, I have actually discovered the real-life identities behind some of the Smurf accounts, regularly posting on the subreddit. Secondly, I know this is the case, because I had this explained to me in great detail by someone. Someone who, incidentally, works for Ubisoft. You also have the few identifiable Ubisoft staff who occasionally post under their real accounts, interjecting in debates like a strong paternal hand reaching down into the discussion, dev-splaining to everyone about how they care, they're working on it, and they're listening. Then, of course, there are the less than genuine straight-up Smurfs. They attack out of the sun on accounts ranging from between a few months and a few days old. They frequently seem to know an unnatural amount about the video development process and or some personal, emotional attachment to a particular dev, CM or aspect of the game design. They're frequently aggressive, angry or straight up homicidal. It's largely conjecture who some of these people are, but if I were a betting man, I would speculate that they were drawn from the following pool. Aggrieved developers, zealot ETF members and star players, off-duty community managers, very, very angry fanboys. Fanboys who are under the illusion that they have a personal relationship with someone at Ubisoft because they said something nice to them once. I'm also going to include Division 2 subreddit mods on this list, primarily because on a few occasions I've had Smurfs launch personal attacks on me with complete impunity. The very fact that the account was tolerated by the sub sadly leads me to the conclusion that they at least suspected who was doing it. For a variety of reasons, all these people appear at least to have the profile of someone who has clearly jumped on a sock puppet account, so they can fully articulate their hatred for the critics of the game in a secure, consequence-free environment where they can fully vent their fucking fury without repercussion on their main accounts. The commonality amongst this type of sock puppet account is that there is usually always some level of emotional dimension to their rhetoric. As an anecdotal tale, I first got tuned into this process during the heated debate when the Division decided to start peddling loot crates in the game despite promises to the contrary. It did not go unnoticed that some of the people arguing that the pedo caches were a dick move suddenly started getting lots of new accounts following us on social media, and these brand new accounts jumped out of the ether, fully informed about the debate, defended loot boxes with a passion, and many of them were frankly obnoxious cunts. On top of all of this, there is of course the very deliberate tactical and fairly obvious public relations accounts operated by the companies that game publishers outsource some of their PR work to. You know, impression management, dealing with content creators, operating in the more grey areas of marketing. You know, the people who organise the favours, bribes, bent reviews and advertise on their websites about how many fake accounts they can leverage to infiltrate your community and post on social media, telling everyone how super fucking awesome everything is. Ever seen some utterly stupid post on a gaming subreddit saying something like, "I'm super hyped about how awesome the new microtransactions are," and it suddenly gets 2,000 upvotes in about 90 minutes? Even though that might be more than the average hourly traffic for that subreddit? Well, that shit right there is almost certainly an outsourced PR company. I strongly recommend you watch the following two YouTube videos, which I consider must-see viewing. Reddit for Sale, by Point, a channel dedicated to investigative journalism focusing on technology and internet culture.
We've proven that Reddit popularity can be bought and paid for with simple online services, and this is clearly a huge problem.
And How I Was Bribed by the Video Game Industry, by Downward Thrust, a YouTuber who incidentally seems to have come under a lot of fire from the gaming industry after he made this video about the gaming industry trying to bribe him. Funny that. In fact, ain't it just a mighty big coincidence that lots of YouTubers who refuse bribes or take an anti-corruption footing seem to be relentlessly attacked from every fucking direction? What a fucking coincidence. Between these two videos, I think you have enough evidence that PR companies exist openly in the public domain, shamelessly advertising their services as I have described, and that game publishers like Ubisoft employ them to do some of the dirty work of PR so they can keep at least one hand clean. Outsourcing is, after all, a very convenient and viable tactic for maintaining plausible deniability, particularly useful for a company like Ubisoft, who has already been busted once for trying to leverage positive reviews with the threat of withholding copies of the game. Before we move on, I would like to note that this kind of propaganda apparatus frequently results in metaphorical crimes that are not entirely victimless. You see, it's one thing to promote a video game by devious means, but things get more sinister when you turn this machinery against the people criticising your product. Once you start to weaponise your fan base and turn them against people, some fairly dark shit starts to happen. I've witnessed multiple content creators branded as having some form of mental breakdown the instant they started to challenge Ubisoft over this franchise. I have seen channels swarmed by angry hordes of shitposters. I've received all manner of threats and abuse, and had all manner of Smurf accounts pop up to spread smear stories about me. My personal favourite was when someone, clearly from a public relations background, popped up on a sock puppet account on the subreddit claiming that my intro theme was Jump Jim Crow, and tried to spin some narrative that I'm some kind of fucking Ku Klux Klan supporter and tried to encourage outrage at my channel. The music is, of course, free YouTube music, and in case you haven't guessed it, I'm not a member of the clan. And needless to say, that person deleted the account shortly afterwards. Then of course, there is the ongoing divide and conquer tactics. PC versus console, PvE versus PvP. It's always a handy tactic to pull out if you want to bury bad news. They fucking love it when we argue amongst ourselves and get distracted from the bigger picture. I swear to God, there have been numerous occasions where I suspect they have just pulled some deliberate move that dicks one group or another just so they can cause a distraction and get us to squabble amongst ourselves rather than complain about the wider failings of the franchise. As I said earlier, public relations is about being perceived as nice, not being nice, and they don't play nice. Censorship. I knew The Division 2 was having profound problems and the management had shit the bed for two main reasons. They started throwing each other under the bus and contradicting each other's plans on State of the Game. But most importantly, they started banning content creators and non-partnered YouTubers on the official Ubisoft subreddit, and developers started blocking content creators on social media. Only the other day, Sir Grumpsalot got banned from the subreddit and joined the elite cadre of YouTubers and streamers that are no longer welcome there. Freddy Thailander is blocking people on Twitter with a fucking vengeance. He blocked YouTuber and streamer Marco Style just for making a joke, and he blocked me for, I guess, not being servile enough. If you complain about the game on the official forums, the post is quickly diverted to the obscure bug reporting section so as not to make a bad impression on visitors. If you post critical videos, it gets moved to the creators subforum. Ergo, fucking buried. The censorship extends as far as the known issues list, which is, by any standard, a sick fucking joke. Yeah, you saw that right. According to Ubisoft Massive, The Division 2 only has 5 bugs. What the actual fuck? A friend of mine first alerted me to this fuckery and how Massive censors its own known issues list as part of the general impression management tactics. If that known issues list was accurate, it would be a fucking subforum in its own right. It would look like the fucking telephone directory. Do they still exist? The state of the game deconstructed. I've discussed the pantomime that is State of the Game many times, but nevertheless there are a few key tropes and tricks to keep an eye on. They frequently entirely ignore key burning issues in chat. They pretend like they're responding to it genuinely, but if you watch closely, they deliberately ignore specific issues. I'm sure Division 1 players will remember the relentless spam about anti-cheat, lag, the chicken dance, and how it would be ignored for months, perhaps years on end. We are listening. Listening, so what? If a surgeon speaks to you at your bedside and listens to you describe your symptoms, then does heart surgery on you the next day and saves your life. That's brilliant. But I can do the listening part. It doesn't mean I'm a fucking surgeon. It's nice they say they listen, but without action, it's meaningless. We are aware of that. This basically means stop talking about it. It does not mean anything is being done. It's code for we know. No need to keep bringing that up again. Shut the fuck up about it. And if anyone misinterprets what I said as it's going to be fixed, well, more lol on them. We are working on it. Well, I've seen them working on stuff for years on end on the Division 1, and the same shit is still broken in the Division 2. This phrase is code for leave us alone. If they could have fixed it easily, they would have done it by now. We are working on it means this. It means they haven't fixed it. In fact, nearly every single fucking trope they use on State of the Game is code for we haven't fucking fixed that, and we probably won't. State of the Game is theatre. What it precisely is not is a place to take complaints, where they listen and then fix stuff. That is not the dynamic here. There is no virtuous circle. They fix the stuff that is easiest and cheapest to fix, usually from the list of stuff causing the biggest problems. It's got fuck all to do with your feedback on State of the Game. If you think the state of the game is some kind of corporate vertical communications superhighway where the community managers act like a conduit, taking player concerns immediately up through the company to the highest levels, then you are living in a fantasy world. You must be fucking high. The community managers placate the players with promises. When state of the game is over, they switch the lights off and go and do something else until the following week.
Hi everyone, today on PC for Beginners, we're going to give you some easy tips and tricks to help you improve the performance of your machine and maybe tidy things up a little bit from a software perspective.
They do their CM stuff over in the CM corner of the building. The developers do their dev stuff over in the dev corner of the building and try and fix the shit they're told to by their managers.
So you can get out there and, be nice to people. There you go.
There's no genuine circular feedback loop here. Yannick does not rush out of the state of the game with a comment he read in chat and run through the building to find a dev who can get right on the problem and fix it. They probably throw their fucking notes in the bin the second the cameras are turned off. I've spoken to a few devs at Ubisoft, and they rarely, if ever, meet a community manager. They get their workload and instructions from their managers, and that is mostly driven by the list of things they know are broken and shit they read in the bug report forms. Let that sink in. Most of the devs I spoke to have never even fucking met a community manager. But hey, they are at least listening and then throwing their notes in the bin and then fucking off down the pub. Creating and branding the Outgroup. One thing you will notice about micromanaged gaming communities where the publisher has a big hand in shaping the narrative is that certain themes are constantly being pushed by community managers and representatives of the company. It's not a fucking accident that CMs, their affiliates and minions are constantly on social media, bleating on, promoting positivity and being snide and sneery about members of the community who are negative. Terms like toxic, entitled and negative are labels continually deployed indiscriminately to label pretty much anyone unhappy with the product. The whole point being to create an outgroup and lump all unpleasant behaviour in together, including legitimate complaint. It's about disintegrating any distinction between unacceptable conduct and justified customer outrage. Personally, I avoid using the word toxic wherever possible. It's become a loaded word which carries associated connotations. It's a dog whistle term. Toxic is a slur that maybe once meant horrible, but these days also means critical. Toxic is now a label that takes all the racists, homophobic, hate-mongering shitbags in the gaming community, of which frankly there are not that many, and throws them all in a jail cell, then quickly pushes in the complaining customers behind them before slamming the door. These days I see little distinction in the way the word is used, and it's used to describe both unhappy customer and bigot indiscriminately. I'm sure we have all seen those posts by players raising legitimate concerns about the franchise, and they preface their comments with some kind of apology. They start with a statement along the lines of, "I don't want to come across as toxic, but..." And this is, of course, the point of pushing the toxicity narrative. Lump all negativity into the same category and decree it as an indication of a bad actor. This narrative of toxicity is all about predefining customer complaint as negativity and a negative trait. It's about servicing this fucking disingenuous notion that if you complain, it's because you are a bad person with bad qualities and you should be criticised for being negative. There is a reason community managers and PR guys are constantly flogging this horse and branding certain parts of the community as toxic. That reason is because they are trying to align complaint with negative and destructive qualities. You see, the relationship between publisher and customer is very simple. They sell a product, and it's our fucking right to complain if that product is shit or broken. However, the more publishers push live service games that arrive unfinished, the harder they have to work to mitigate complaints and silence legitimate consumer outrage. constantly pushing narratives on social media about certain sections of the community being toxic, entitled and negative is part of this process. At the end of the day, if a game is fucking excellent, most of the players will be happy. If the game is fucking dreadful, most of the players will be unhappy. I would fucking postulate that fixing the fucking game would be the best way to make players happy. And I am highly suspicious of any proxies of the publisher who tell players how they should behave and feel. If they want people to be positive and happy, they should focus on making better products, not focus on telling everyone how the fuck they should feel about the game. Feelings? Positivity? Get the fuck out of here and come back with a good game. This process is all about creating an outgroup, defining your outcasts and putting everyone in that category, including people who are unhappy with this shit video game. And it's an increasingly used tactic, because it's a fuck sight cheaper than hiring developers to fix the actual game. Imagine if you went to a restaurant and there was a fucking rat in your soup and you complained to the waiter. Imagine if his response was, "I'm sorry, sir, but I'm going to have to ask you to leave because you're being toxic, entitled, and negative." This shit doesn't fly in any other industry, but in video games apparently customer service means branding unhappy customers as bad people. Well, I guess it's about time we hacked this corpse up and threw it in the wood chipper. Ubisoft is all about controlling the narrative with an iron fist. As a viewer once said, The Division 2 is Anthem, released under a media blackout. In fact, I would argue that Ubisoft has become vastly more competent at custom manipulation and propaganda than it ever was at game development. They are an incredibly ruthless lying factory. So let's recap quickly and look at the big picture. The entire live service model is built around exploiting the goodwill and faith of the customer. The entire ecology that the player experiences is full of stooges, sock puppets, partnered content creators and bent news articles. They head to the forums or the subreddit, and that is a controlled environment too. All of the issues I have described in this video work together to deceive and mislead the players, and to create disincentives for complaining. But people are smart, and they've started to see through all of this bullshit. I don't think it will be too long before Ubisoft reaches tipping point and their customers revolt en masse to the growing disparity between reality and Ubisoft's rose-coloured but bullshit-smelling version of events. I think their Bethesda Activision moment is not too far off now. As I said right at the start, they lied about the Division 2 prior to its launch, at the point of sale, during its lifespan, and they will reconstruct its narrative when this shitshow is all over. Ubisoft will construct a noble and valiant tale of how the Division 2 bravely struggled through its problems, and devs heroically battled to finally deliver the game the ungrateful bastard players deserved. Those of us who have ridden on the rollercoaster ride before with the Division 1 will see through this lie. This game launched incomplete, untested, unpolished, and was made by a skeleton crew on a budget. Ubisoft limped this game down the road, lying to the world about the cause of the problems and how bad they really were, and then tried to spin a bullshit yarn to hide the one simple truth. Ubisoft overpriced a minimum viable product. They tried to extract the maximum possible profits from its customers. They will relentlessly lie throughout its lifespan, and they will try and sell the end result as a win. I know all of this not because I can see into the future. I know all of this because it's exactly what they fucking did with the Division 1. If the Division 2 really is as good as they say it is, and Ubisoft Massive are not lying, and we can believe them, how come the sales collapsed? How come it was quickly on discount? How come all the players have left? How come all the clans are a ghost town? How come only one fucking Ubisoft star player is still regularly streaming it? This game is a masterpiece, allegedly. A masterpiece that no fucker is interested in playing. Because it's boring. As I said at the start, the Division 2 was a smoke-filled room. They blew that smoke right up our arses. I think it's important to say that despite all this fuckery, manipulation and anti-consumer practices, it's important that we continue to keep the moral high ground. Many gamers are starting to figure out precisely who is doing what. But in all our dealings we should remain civil and reasoned on social media, forums and comment sections on YouTube. You might know damn well someone is a fucking shill, and it's not my place to tell you what to say, but I would like to advise you how to say it. For example, if someone is lying, shilling or talking nonsense, raging at them does not achieve anything. If you politely ask a content creator, are you working with that publisher? Then that at least is now a question they have to avoid, answer, confess to, or lie about. A viewer on this channel humbled me by the way he addressed a bunch of haters right here. Hike School kept completely cool and just politely and without being argumentative questioned them about their views and asked them to justify their positions. This approach is not only very disarming, but by remaining civil, nobody could point the finger and accuse him of being some toxic malcontent. Perhaps most importantly, the way Hike School spoke to these guys actually stood a chance of changing their opinions. And if they had a decent point to make, he was also listening. Remember that people respond well to communication, not abuse. And some delusional fanboy, or fangirl, I'm not sexist, might actually change their mind if spoken to like Hike School did. And similarly, they might become an even angrier, more entrenched antagonist if people are obnoxious to them. Besides, I think I'm being obnoxious enough for all of us. But for now, good luck and happy hunting.